things that brokers can do to stand out in your eyes to maybe get an opportunity?
So it's great that you asked that. I've actually made a video about this.
I watched it.
I get asked this question so many times.
Yeah.
It's so important for salespeople to know, like, what do I think? It's part of what I'm doing, why I'm doing what I'm doing.
Yeah.
So first, like, have talks to me. Like, I need to like have a name that I can kind of reference. So let's say a load falls, someone can't cover it for whatever reason, and I need a hot fill. I'm gonna just go into my Gmail and I'm gonna type in like LTL, FTL freight, and then like it's gonna give me a list of
all the names. Yeah.
Right. And that's sort of like the 1 in a million chance. I don't have, all right, like the carriers I'm using, they're pretty reliable for a reason.
Yeah.
I don't have a whole lot of that happening. Other ways to kind of get in is to know my business, know what I'm shipping, right? So if you were trying to approach me at FabFitFun, you could say like, hey, I know that you're doing parcel.
Welcome to the ThinkFreight Podcast. I'm your host, Thomas Werdine, and it's my pleasure to have Matthew Chapa from Low Budget Logistics and ex-FabFitFun Senior Logistics Manager. Matthew, welcome to the ThinkFreight Podcast. Thanks for coming on today, man.
Thanks, Thomas. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. So you've recently started Low Budget Logistics. How's the creator life been treating you?
It's been fun. You know, I sort of needed something to do and saw like, oh, there's a niche that needs to be filled, and like people need to know about what we do in our life, and so we're gonna get out there. We're gonna take it to YouTube. We're gonna get it.
I love that. I don't disagree, because obviously I started my own, podcast. I'm not sure what episode this is going to be, but we've released, 13 episodes so far, and it's been a lot of fun, and we've seen a lot of people want to hear about these conversations, and that's kind of one of the reasons I wanted to have you on, because you've had a lot of interesting, I think different jobs in logistics, a lot of roles in logistics. Yep. And I think that it's going to help a lot of the listeners. We have a lot of freight brokers, a lot of drivers, owner operators, and carrier groups that listen to the show. And I think that your experience will translate well to kind of what we like to talk about here. But before I get too deep, I wanted to ask you, what is your favorite kind of logistics before we get too deep?
My favorite, so the most fun type of logistics that I've ever done is international logistics, like by far.
Okay.
It's the most fun. You get to work with different cultures, different people, learn sort of different things. And that world is really like up for like what you make of it. So like, okay, you can play with free trade zones. You can play with like all different types of shipping, and you get into like the legal of like, what is this thing? And so it makes it really fun. But it is by far like the thing I get to do the least, unfortunately. I've spent most of my time doing domestic stuff. So yeah, I love international is kind of my pride.
That's really interesting. So I'll be honest, I've never done any international aside from a few shipments. I've done a lot of shipments to Canada. Yep. I think those are pretty standard routine. I've done a few to Mexico, same thing, pretty standard routine, but I've never done any like imports or exports or anything like that. I think that would be really, really fascinating. My mom actually does a lot with Maersk. She works for Maersk, mm-hmm. and does a lot on that side. So like I hear about that side quite a bit, but I don't live the life. So it's not like I don't get to dive as deep and like get my hands wet with it as much. So like I love to like hear like when people say that, like it's just always so fascinating to me, because it's like I've always been on the domestic side. So it's like I know full truckload, I know less than truckload, I know intermodal, I know all those modes, but I don't know as much of like the import export side. So that's cool to hear.
Yeah, importing it's specialized. Like logistics likes to get super specialized, which is, it kind of sucks because a lot of the skills are really transferable.
Definitely.
But like you just sort of get stovepiped into like, oh, I do international logistics. This is the like route that I'm going to take. So I've been very fortunate to not get as like stovepiped in that.
No, that's cool. I'm glad you've like been able to like try to like use all those different modes and try to like learn from some of those like different modes. Like I wish I had like some of those experiences. That's so cool. Let's dive into your
Yeah.
background some more. So like what, how did you find yourself in the sexy world of freight, right? Like I don't think that when you were like 14, you were like I'm gonna be in freight when I grow up, right?
You'd be surprised. So I guess very transformative moment for me. I think I was in like fourth grade.
Yeah.
I went to the like Shriners Circus, and I was just
Hmm.
like super focused. And so it's a three-ring circus, and I was like super focused on like what was happening, like not in the like main circle, right? So
Hmm.
watching guys like put stuff up and like get things ready for the next act or what have you was sort of
Right.
like really interesting for me. And for years, I was like, okay, that was cool, but I want to fly, like I want to be a pilot. And so
Okay.
I basically set my entire life around like becoming a pilot, specifically for the Navy, and then that switched to the Marine Corps.
What made you wanted to, what interested you in becoming a pilot?
Just the freedom of like flying is
Yeah.
great.
Yeah. That's
So
awesome.
I did it like it did. I took some courses, had have like 10 hours private pilot's license, up to almost.
Nice.
I didn't solo, but I almost got to it. And then I went to college, and the military paid for college. I went to A&M here in Texas, and was like, great, I'm gonna be a pilot. And then like senior year of college, I was going to get my flight physical, and they're like, hey, nope, never gonna happen. You didn't
Oh
pass it.
no.
Yeah, I had like some like heart defect, so it was like huge
Oh
bummer.
shoot.
And I had switched from the Navy to the Marine Corps, and so I was like, great. The Marines like, great, you can go ground. You're gonna be the Marines. And so I was like talking to other officers, just like, hey, what is there to even do? Because I've been so like focused on being a pilot,
Right.
and they're like, oh, like you could shoot artillery, you could drive tanks, you could do whatever, and they were like, you could do logistics. And I was like, what is logistics?
What is
And
that?
so they're like, oh yeah, it's doing all this stuff, it's doing all this behind the scenes work, and it's getting stuff from one place to there and driving trucks. And I was like, okay, that sounds pretty cool. And then in the Marine Corps, you get to do this really fun, like 6 month long class. And part of it was like learning about the different jobs that you could do. So
Hmm.
from that, I was like, oh, I like being around heavy equipment. I like being around trucks. So I think I'll do logistics. So I did logistics, did that for 4 years in the Marine Corps. Spent a summer in Afghanistan. It was a bad summer vacation. I don't go there.
Don't recommend.
A lot of sand, not a whole lot of surf. And so got out of that, and was just sort of looking for a job. Still like, do I want to do logistics? Is that a thing? And then I got on at Apple here in Austin.
Hmm.
And that was really like the learning was like, oh, this is how this world works. And really kind of learning like, oh, this logistics and supply chain is how businesses function. Like this is so
Yeah.
integral to every every business, no matter what you're part of. You need to have some aspect of it.
Definitely.
And so from there, I was like, oh, I like this. I like doing this thing. It's hard, like it's difficult for sure. But I like the difficulty of it. And I don't like spending Thanksgiving with my family. I like to, be packing orders for e-commerce. It's a joke.
Yeah.
So, so I,
Everyone hates Thanksgiving with their family.
yeah, it's great to be like, okay, everyone has to go home because Black Friday is tomorrow, and I need to go to sleep because I've got a 4 a.m. shift at
Right.
the distribution center.
No, that's
Uh,
that's hilarious.
yeah, so I was at Apple, learned kind of what a world class supply chain looks like, how it functions, but really kind of was like, I'm tired of just kind of keeping the wheels in the bus. I wanna move to someplace where I can put my fingerprints on it.
Yeah.
I was very fortunate. There's a fashion jewelry company here in Austin. It's called Kendra Scott.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, some people know about it.
Oh yeah.
And so they found me and they're like, hey, your resume looks good. We want you to come on and we want you to do all of our logistics. No one is doing that right now. And so I stepped in there, and it was a wild ride. So I took
How
on
old were you? How old were you at that point?
24,
Oh
25,
wow,
something crazy, right? So it was like
wow, yeah,
super fresh and just like, yeah, I'm gonna take on the world. And so, um, yeah, I took on like, so like this is a funny story. Best boss I ever had. I like accepted the job, and on the phone call while I'm like saying, yeah, I'm excited, to join the team. She goes, hey, do you have a passport? Yeah. She goes, great. I need you to get can you be in China with me in 6 weeks?
Oh my
I
god.
was like, I just said yes to this job. Let me like ask my wife if it's okay
Right.
if I go in 6 weeks from now.
How
Uh,
long were you? How long did they want you to go to China for?
we
Did you
would
go?
go we would go for a week at a time. So
Okay,
yeah,
so
and
not like a long time, but that's a good amount.
it is long enough to get over the jet lag and then have to get
Get
back
right
over
back
it
into.
again when you come back.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So yeah, like 6 weeks later, I'm on a flight to Hong Kong. It was wild.
Wow.
Um, and kind of learning the supply chain because they were manufacturing in the Guangzhou area, which is north and northeast, northwest of
Okay.
Hong Kong itself. So it was lots of fun. Learn kind of what the factories look like, how they operate, and then sort of came back from that, and then just started into like let's optimize this thing. And they were doing
Yeah.
everything inbound parcel, just like great, we're going to drop a lot of cost. And so we took their packages from like $2 a unit inbound to like 2 cents. So it was just like
Yeah.
insane. Just like, yeah, there's so many like low hanging fruits here. We're just going to grab them all up.
It just
So
sounds
did
like they
that.
didn't have a good. They did like you said, like when they came in, no one was really doing it, and it sounded like no one really had an idea as to like how to really implement changes to get those costs down, right? And
Yeah.
then when you had already worked with being in the military for 4 years with the Marine Corps, working those logistics, but also with Apple, like you probably were able to like implement a lot of things that you learned from Apple right away to
Yeah.
like initiate cost savings, and they probably thought you were a damn magician coming in there and being able to like do this. Like, man, this guy is like a brilliant. Like he's just Albert Einstein. He's changing everything we're doing here, right?
Yeah. One of the most fun conversations was like sitting down with our accountants they were billing COGS, and we did COGS in a kind of a weird way.
Yeah.
But they're like, hey, we went from billing like freight in at like $2 a unit to 2 cents. They're like, did we miss? Did we miss a bill? Did we
Right.
miss? Is there something missing here? I was just like,
No.
nah, we just did it the right way. If you do
Yeah.
things the right way in the
We
world of logistics,
optimized what we were doing, and now we're
yeah,
saving $1.98 a unit.
yeah, hand over fist. So that
Wow.
was great, right? You only get so many chances in your life to do something like that, and so it was a
That's
lot of
cool.
fun, and what was really great. My boss was just fantastic, and she gave all of her direct reports just kind of free reign. Like we built a level of trust.
That's great.
We flew to China together 6 times over the course of the 4 years I was there, and just like, yeah, whatever you want to do, Matt. Like I trust you. I trust that like
That's
what you're
great.
doing is right, and like let's make it happen. So it was fun to be a part of that and just make things happen.
I think that's awesome, and I think that we'll touch on this more later, but relationships are so important, and even internal relationships with your employees. I think when you really build that trust in that and have that kind of relationship, it goes to show like what you guys can do. If
Yeah,
they bring you on for a reason, not to babysit and hold your hand, and like they're there if it's needed, support's needed, but that's why they brought you on, is to
yeah,
implement and to help them where they're not efficient, and obviously you had the tools to help make them efficient. So it made sense to just like let you be Matt and let you be Matthew, and grow and do what you need to do to make the business flourish. I think that's really an underrated like aspect of logistics, is just having the trust in your employees to do the job you employ them to do, right?
yes, yes. It's it's been a thing that I've missed since then. Not that I've had, I've had jobs
Yeah.
Since being at Kendra. But that was something that I find I really miss, of like having that level of trust and not having to kind of regain that trust over time. Like I made mistakes. I moved a load of what was it? Stone frames, trays, and like I forget what else. It was a bunch of home goods. And I moved it
Home
all
good
in the
stuff.
air.
Yeah.
All in the air during like Thanksgiving. It was,
Oh
and I
my
was like,
gosh.
yeah, costs are going to be low. And sure, it was lower than it could have been, but we should have gone on the ocean.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, we ate just a huge cost. And I like had to go sit in front of her like, hey, I'm sorry. Like, I feel bad that I put you in this position and you're going to have to now go like
Yep. Help
on
her.
top of the bomb that we've dropped. We like cost a whole bunch more actually. So there was a lot of reasons for that, but yeah, it was nice to kind of have that and to not feel like someone was kind of looking over my shoulder all the time and kind
Right.
of double checking my work. Cause like, yeah, I can do Excel. And like the numbers prove themselves out. But like
Exactly.
what I really find interesting about logistics is just kind of being creative in the supply chain. Like what I
Absolutely.
said about like international logistics of like, you get to play around with what are shipments? What is a free trade zone? How can I optimize this thing? And so that's where I find that I thrive, is kind of being big picture and saying like, hey, here's the forward strategy that we want to go to, and
Definitely.
let's run at it.
I think that's awesome, man. And I think it's going to segue really well into my next question that I've got is, what is the typical day of a domestic logistics manager look like? So if you're moving a lot of inbound, outbound, full truckload, LTL, what does your typical day look like? And I've got a few other questions that I'll ask from
Yeah,
that kind of relate to the freight broker side.
yeah, sure. So it starts with coffee, it ends with coffee, all coffee all the way through. And Excel.
Drip right into your vein. You walk in, they tap your vein,
Yep.
put the coffee drip in, and then you start your morning.
Yeah. So yeah, I boot my computer up, I brew a cup of coffee, and then kind of get into it. And so, yeah, I moved from Kendra. Found my way to FabFitFun as a senior logistics manager there, and we were doing domestic freight. That was what we were
Okay.
doing, primarily parcel, zone skip. Doing all the really fancy stuff. And so yeah, so the day starts with coffee, and it's just like, let's check emails and
Hmm.
see what might have happened since I've been gone. Right, I was a remote employee for California, so I got a nice 2 hour head start on
That's
them.
nice.
Yeah, and so I check on see what's going on. I look at my visibility tools. So we had a Tableau dashboard,
Okay.
just kind of see like, how is the freight moving, and that's always kind of the goal that I've seen is like, being immersed in data allows you to kind of like do things by muscle memory and like watch and
Definitely.
see like how many of your packages that shipped on X day had a first scan today or a delivery scan, and what's fallen off of the report. And so just kind of familiarizing yourself with the lay of the land every day was important. And then we had
Hmm.
projects that we were working on. We might be evaluating a new carrier, so I might be working in pricing tables in Excel and working through pivots and if then statements and all of the stuff.
All the fun stuff. Real fun stuff.
Yeah, you know, building formulas, writing stuff, and so I kind of do that, and then we'd have our morning meeting. Everyone would sort of we'd check in with everyone, make sure that the warehouse is working right. If they needed extra volume or capacity or what have you, we would work to find that for them. But again, typically it was like, is everything going to the plan that was created? And if it's not, then let's like figure that out. And that's super common basically across every company that I've been in. There's always a like round table of managers
Hmm.
where we talk about like, hey, we've all sort of got our bearings for the day. Let's talk about what we might need as far as resources or capacity. And then from there, kind of run on. If I was in our busy season or in a season whatsoever, like in a volume amount,
When is the typical like busy season for a company like FabFitFun or Kendra Scott?
That depends, right? So the answer is different. It depends on your business model and who you're selling to. So Kendra's high season, because it was a more typical e-commerce and retail business, we would be high during gifting season. So, right, your typical like sense. Black Friday, Cyber Monday, we'd be super high then. It would also be high because Kendra was a female focused customer. We would be high during Valentine's Day and Mother's Day as well. Those were our other kind of two peaks. And then we would just be empty during the summer. Kind of empty, yeah. And so FabFitFun was a subscription model. And so every quarter we were busy. And so when I was interviewing for the position, we were like, oh yeah, we have four peaks a year. And I was like, okay, like that makes sense. And I was like, oh no, it's legit. It's 4 different Black Fridays in a year. And wow. You're going to be reforecasting. Like you get done with one, you're going to reforecast for the next. So that was busy. But after a while, you kind of get used to just like, oh, I shipped 65,000 parcels yesterday. No big deal. Yeah. You kind of like lose when you're at that scale and you kind of work at that speed, you kind of get used to just like things happen and like,
yeah. I'm sure like day one, it's very overwhelming and you're like, holy crap, we moved, 50,000 parcels. But then it's like by the end of the year or, going into year 2, it's like, oh, we moved 65,000 parcels. That's, that's a low month or, whatever. It's just like, it becomes second nature, right?
Oh, that was 65 in a day.
Oh, in a day. That's right. Okay. My bad. 65,000 a day. So yeah, like you become very accustomed to those kind of numbers. And it's just like, man, like it doesn't even matter anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, in the interview process for FabFitFun, I was working with a furniture company here in Austin. We were moving like $30,000 pieces of like couches and stuff.
Oh wow!
And the senior VP of logistics and supply chain asked me like, "Hey, how many truckloads per week do you think you move?" And I was like, "Oh, I don't know, like maybe 10 per week." I felt pretty good, like full truckloads. He goes, "Oh, we move 15 truckloads per day, parcel." I was like, just the scale of it was massive.
Yeah, wow.
So that was fun, and it was enjoyable to be part of that. But that's sort of what we were doing. If I was in like a high season, I would be talking to my carriers, right? So in that environment, I had 2 freight brokers. I had 6 parcel carriers, and we were zone skip injecting into each one of them. And so it got pretty busy, and like during those high seasons, it was like, okay, I've now checked in with my internal peers. Let's talk to the carriers. And so I would be on the horn, talking to my FedEx guy, talking to my on-track guy, talking just sort of like, how's everything going? How's volume moving?
Yeah.
Are there any issues that I need to be aware of? And then during that kind of time, I was also helping. Right, because we were customer facing, we were getting inquiries from customer service. Hey, this package is lost or damaged, or like what's going on with this stuff. And so fielding those calls as well, kind of answering those questions, either stuff that I could answer for the customer service people immediately, just based off of what the scans were telling me,
right,
or reaching out to the carriers and understanding what was going on there. So there was a lot of that. And then,
it's a lot of things people don't think about, right? Like they don't realize that may fall into a logistics manager's hands at the end of the day. Like I know, like probably a couple of weeks ago, I was like looking for a package that had missed delivery 2 days in a row. And I was like, okay, on track. Like, where's my package? Like, and like, I was probably, when I'm calling them, they're probably like, hey, we'll look into this. And then they're reaching out to someone, such as yourself or internally and saying, hey, like, where's our package? Where's this? Yeah. And it ultimately falls back into, someone like yourself who has to ultimately, if that rep can't find it or there's some issue, you ultimately are the one looking for it or trying to find it. So that's, something that most people don't think about. And it's very interesting to kind of hear that, that kind of works that way, right?
Oh yeah, that was really like news to me coming out of the military and into the civilian world. Was like, oh, yeah. I'm the person who's in touch with the carriers, and the carriers are the last like hands touching this package that's going to go to my customer. And so I control that relationship, and I need to like be in control of it.
Definitely.
So yeah, and like there's a lot of stuff that you kind of learn the shorthand for what carriers are doing when you see. I'm pretty good. My wife is really good. She asks me all the time, like, "Hey, what's going on with my package?" I'm like, "It's lost. It's just straight up lost." I know. Like when I see this scan successively, like, it's just lost. You're gonna have to just call customer service up. They'll send you a new one.
So anyone listening to this, if you have an issue with a package, call Matthew. He's going to tell you exactly what's going on with it. No questions asked. He's doing this free of charge for everyone in the country. I'm just kidding. Don't contact Matthew. Just call customer service.
Call customer service. They will find their own Matthew, and they will answer questions. Yeah.
Every company has a Matthew to do that for them.
Hopefully,
Hopefully, yeah. If not, yeah,
let me know.
Your package is just gone.
Yeah. So yeah, it's kind of every day was kind of different. Every day was kind of the same. I was always sort of doing something, looking at some data, kind of just trying to put the fires out. All the time was the plan.
That's that's what I hear a lot. It's just a lot of putting out a lot of dumpster fires.
Yes.
Now you had mentioned you kind of start your day with emails, and you had also mentioned you guys have or were working with 2 brokers. Were those brokers kind of in place when you came there, or did you guys how often were you guys kind of evaluating those relationships? And I guess I'll ask my next question after that.
Yeah. So when I came in, we were not doing zone skipping really formally. We had regional carriers that we were injecting into, so it was a kind of zone skipping, and we only really needed we needed one broker, and they were good, and they were a legacy. Our SVP had a relationship with them previously, and they were meeting what we needed. And then when we started, breaking out into a much more formal zone skip, we identified that there's just a lot going on. Right, I mentioned 15 truckloads per day. Was a bit more than one broker could really handle, not for any ill reason, but it's just a lot. And so to also add,
you also don't want to put all your eggs in one basket, right? If they're using one or 2 carriers and for whatever reason they have an issue, then at least you have another broker. Like you didn't just waste a whole day and then now you've got 30 shipments to get out the next day or whatever. Because those are going to happen, right? I'm sure that you may have been moving 15 truckloads, but there's days on average that maybe you were getting 19 or 20 out, and some days you were getting 4 out because there were issues or whatever. So no, it makes sense that didn't want to put all those eggs in one basket, even though as a freight broker, at heart, I'm like, hey man, give me all the freight. I can take it all. I can handle 15. Come on.
Yes. Yeah. And it's resiliency is so important in the supply chain, especially in logistics, because stuff happens.
Yeah, definitely.
Weather happens, right? Things just occur that you can't account for, and so you need to have switches to pull. So that was sort of we added one out. I had experience with them. I felt super comfortable. If they're watching, I love you. And so it was very much like, hey, I got a name, right? We talked about relationships. Yeah. I got a guy for whatever thing. I know someone to be like, hey, this is a rock solid broker. Let's get at it. And so added them in, and added some competition into the marketplace as well. We're getting good rates from them, and it was nice to be able to kind of confirm what one carrier might be telling us, against another broker. And so
definitely,
what's the right number? Where are we going? Where are we seeing?
And if you're hearing 2 completely different numbers, you maybe know, okay, one is someone ripping us off, or 2, is there a shift happening in the market that one broker is seeing, another isn't seeing?
Yeah.
So it can kind of highlight some maybe underlying issues or potential issues that might be popping up. Or even just hey, we're getting screwed. We need to have a conversation, right?
Yeah, I've had several conversations with brokers of hey, your number in this lane, it's a little high. Do you want to maybe sharpen the pencil on it a little bit? And so, yeah, they'll come back and go, oh, are we super over? Like, yeah, you need to come down.
Yeah, you know you're super over. Your
Yeah.
margin is really high.
Yeah.
No, I think that's interesting because it's just like what we like kind of opened with was it's very relationship based, and I think that's something that a lot of people don't realize. I think at one point, Matthew, I think I had actually tried to reach out to FabFitFun, and I don't know how long ago this was, but it was like I remember I had like talked to someone there, and they're like, yeah, like we have really good parcel relationships and two or three really solid brokers that we use, and I was just like, okay, great, but what if those brokers have issues, right? So how do you go about evaluating those relationships over I guess over the course of the year, or do you guys just evaluate on like, okay, there's been a lot of turbulence or a lot of issues lately, maybe it's time to reevaluate, or is that just kind of something that you'll weather the storm because they've overall been a good partner?
Yeah, there's lots of things that we can do as a shipper, not necessarily to penalize someone that we might have a problem with, but just to sort of do different things. So if if we're noticing that a carrier might not be able to source enough, capacity into some lane, then we might just cap them and just say, hey, like you're getting 2 trucks out of the 4, and like you're still getting some, you're just not going to get everything.
Yeah.
So we'll play that one. Normally that's kind of the first one that we'll pull is just like, give you a bit of time. Like, let's take some weight off your back, get you back to it. And I'll do that with parcel carriers all the time because they'll as you get down into the regionals, their capacity is so much more finite than like the national carriers are.
Definitely.
And so it's always good to kind of just go like, hey, there's no harm, no foul. I'm just going to cap you and like figure your stuff out and we'll be right back to it. So evaluating new brokers, it's a question of like, do I really need another person to talk to? Right. Cause I'm already talking to 7, 8. If I'm just doing, domestic, if I'm doing international, I've got another 4 or 5.
And I'm sure that there's also 5 or 6 carriers and 5 or 6 brokers that are kind of like the next in lines that are like, if there is a service issue, I've already kind of started to talk to XYZ broker, XYZ carrier, and we've already kind of started building that relationship. Yeah. So it's kind of like, it kind of falls into a numbers game, right? Like if you're a broker out there that's trying to find shippers, it's tough, especially it's tough because there's probably already lots of relationships established. So if you don't have those relationships, to just kind of naturally talk to these people or have that automatic in, and not to say it's always going to be an automatic in, right? Like there's still other people and other managers that you kind of have to talk to and say, hey, what do you think about this carrier? And it can always be like, it's not always going to be like, oh, hey, I know Matthew, so I'm a shoe in. Like it's still a process, but having those relationships there, and you can say, hey, like I know this broker, I've worked with them, they've got a stellar reputation, so they've already got that leg up. Yeah. So if I was a broker, Matthew, today, and you were at FabFitFun or Low Budget Logistics was moving, full truckload freight, how could I potentially like win you over as like a potential new broker, or to get an opportunity with you, right? For maybe something that another broker had a load fall off, or you've got something urgent. What are some of those, like, I guess, things that brokers can do to stand out in your eyes to maybe get an opportunity?
So it's great that you asked that. I've actually made a video about this.
I watched it.
I get asked this question so many times.
Yeah.
It's so important for salespeople to know, like, what do I think? It's part of what I'm doing, why I'm doing what I'm doing.
Yeah.
So first, like, have talks to me. Like, I need to like have a name that I can kind of reference. So let's say a load falls, someone can't cover it for whatever reason, and I need a hot fill. I'm gonna just go into my Gmail and I'm gonna type in like LTL, FTL freight, and then like it's gonna give me a list of
all the names. Yeah.
Right. And that's sort of like the 1 in a million chance. I don't have, all right, like the carriers I'm using, they're pretty reliable for a reason.
Yeah.
I don't have a whole lot of that happening. Other ways to kind of get in is to know my business, know what I'm shipping, right? So if you were trying to approach me at FabFitFun, you could say like, hey, I know that you're doing parcel. I know that you're, using all these different parcel carriers. You're probably zone skipping, right? You can make some certain assumptions based off of the type of product that I'm doing. And then you can say, hey, I have experience doing zone skip injections. I have, experience with these carriers that you're using, because not everyone has experience with
Definitely
some of the regional carriers, and injecting into those systems are can be tricky. You have to know the right people. Shoot, even with the national carriers, where like FedEx and UPS, you have to know how their system works, and you have to know how to deliver loads to them. So that would be kind of the way, is like prove to me that you've done a little bit of work, you thought things through, and you thought about my business in a way that I care about. As a logistics manager, like I get slammed with emails of new carriers, new brokers trying to get in, and you'll hear the like, oh, I'm an asset-based broker out of da 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 da, and like, I don't care. You're a dime a dozen. Like, differentiate yourself better.
I was just gonna say, I was just gonna ask you was, how many of those type of emails kind of felt like a templated email that just said, hey, I'm XYZ broker, whether it's asset-based or non, I have capacity in your area, or I have trucks unloading near FabFitFun, which, great. You've got trucks unloading at my headquarters. I don't load trucks in my headquarters.
Yep.
But anyway, it's just like, how often were you getting those kind of emails that said, hey, I have trucks. Let me help you. Give me all your freight right now, Matthew. I can help you today. I have trucks in every lane in the United States, and I can help you cheaper than anyone else. How often were you getting those type of emails?
4 or 5 times a day on average.
That's it? 4 or 5 times?
Per day, actually, a lot. It adds up.
I mean, it's 25. I guess if you had the weekends, it's like 35. But I was thinking maybe 10 a day, 15 a day.
I get a lot. I get as much now.
Still, 5 is still a lot, but I genuinely was thinking, like with a lot of the freight brokers, especially like over the last year or two, I was kind of expecting like even more than that. Because I was talking to a friend of mine she's a shipper over in California. They do a lot of reefer freight for garlic. Okay. And she was telling me that they have, from last year, like beginning of this year to last year, going into like now, they've increased the number of calls and emails they're getting by like 35%. It's like she used to get 5 or 6 calls a day like you, or 5 or 6 emails, and it was getting up to like 35, or I'm sorry, like 7 to 10, 7 to 15 a day. And she was just like, it's driving me insane. Like, I don't even answer my work phone anymore, because it was just like, I just do everything from my cell phone for all the brokers that I work with, because it just becomes outrageous there's just not enough time in the day to talk to all the brokers and carriers reaching out.
It just becomes a reflex action. Just delete the email. Like that's the easiest thing. It's just like, I'm coming in, click, 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 delete them all. Like I don't.
Because especially because you're not adding any value, right? You're just saying, hey, I'm asset based and I have trucks in your area. Let me help. And it's like, okay, great. Like I have that. That's covered. Thanks. Yeah. So it's just, I guess it comes into standing out, right? Learning about the business, learning about what you're doing, doing a little bit of homework. I mean, it doesn't take long to like evaluate what FabFitFun is doing, or to like just do 15 minutes of homework and say, okay, this is what they're doing. They're probably doing this. But I think that a lot of brokers don't, especially on the full truckload side, if you're at a mega broker, or you're even at some of these smaller full truckload brokers or agencies that they start, people don't realize how vast and how different like all different kinds of freight is, right? Like a lot of people in the audience may not even know what zone skipping is, or so that's something that like I know what it is. But exactly, I'm going to link to that video. If you guys don't know what zone skipping is, go watch Matthew's video, because he talks about it. That's actually how I learned. I genuinely didn't even know, because all I did was I did mostly just full truckload freight as a broker. So like before I didn't even know what zone skipping was until I saw that. So it's like there are a lot of people that like just don't have, like kind of like what you said, why you're doing low budget logistics is to educate, is to help brokers, help carriers, help anyone in the space like learn about logistics, learn about what's happening in the space. I think that's really cool.
Yeah,
I love that.
Thank you. Yeah, the other thing we've talked about, and like I can't beat this dead horse enough, that like relationships are important. They're
Definitely.
so important. The carrier that I'm thinking of, they know who they are. If they're watching, they definitely know who they are. I have recommended them to my friends. So like I
That's
have
awesome.
a set of like shipper friends who either worked with at Kendra or something else.
Yeah.
And they'll shoot me a text and just say, "Hey Matt, I need someone to do this." I go, "I got a name, best in the business. Here you go." And so I guess the best sales pitch is performance. And if you're doing a good job, right? If you're a broker and you're listening, the best thing that you can do to improve your business is to perform well for whoever you have, right? Like do a great job, and then at some point in time, your person's going to get reached out to by their friend, their contact, who needs a name, and they're going to toss their name. And like that is the most like easiest way to get business, is just like, "Hey Matt, I need a name of a broker. I got a weird load that needs to run." I go, "Hey, here you go. I got a name. I got a guy. He's great."
That's interesting. So, referrals are one of those. I think they're kind of a lost, forgotten art in logistics, right? Yeah. I used to, when I first started my sales career, Matthew, I started in auto sales, and I built from 0 cars a month to, in 2 years, I was selling 22 cars a month. And I did that really easily. I asked for referrals. Yeah. Everyone who bought a car from me generally really liked me, liked the experience, and that's why they were buying a car. And I was just like, "Hey, if you liked my experience, like, let's, if there's a neighbor, a friend, a grandparent, whoever it may be, reach out. I'll definitely take care of them the same way I took care of you, and I'll make sure that they got paid as well. Because if they've got some incentive and they also liked you, they're going to tell all their friends about you. They're going to say, 'Hey, I had a great experience.'" So I've always kind of taken that into account when I've been in logistics too. And as I, when I started in the industry, I started at TQL, and that was always something they were really good at, was saying, "Hey, ask for referrals." Yep. If you do a good job, like obviously on load one, don't ask for a referral, right? Like build a good relationship. If you've been moving consistent loads for 6 months, a year, it's a good time to ask for a referral. So, hey, if you know anyone else that needs freight, or anyone in your area, or if you're just talking with friends and say, "Hey, like I'm moving freight, like help me out. Like I do a good job for you guys." And how do you feel about like brokers or carriers reaching out to you and saying, "Hey, Matthew, I might need, some business, or something's happening. I lost a customer that went into bankruptcy. Do you know anyone that's like moving freight that might be able to help?" Would you ever give referrals like that from that perspective?
100%. Awesome. Right, like if you've done a good job for me, you're going to get a referral, right? I've sort of said that. Yeah. And so I've not had that specific instance happen where someone has necessarily asked me for a referral. Mm-hmm. But yeah, like it's definitely a thing that I would be happy to do. And I know, awesome. I've worked in a lot of places. I've done a lot of different things. I know a lot of people, either, just from LinkedIn or YouTube or what have you. And so, yeah, like I always like happy to give a referral if I'm able to give it to someone who might need it. That's sort of the other thing, is like everyone's kind of got their people. They got their like dice. They've got their ducks in a row. Yeah. I always like happy to give a referral to a friend, because like I know that they're going to do a good job.
I love that, man. I love that a lot. I've got, as we're coming up on time here, I've got a couple of questions from the Twitter audience. I let them know that I was having a logistics manager on, and they had a couple of interesting questions. So we'll do these kind of rapid fire. What is the most cold calls you've received in one day?
In one day, I don't know, probably 5 or 6.
5 or 6. That's pretty solid.
Like now, calls themselves. Yeah.
Yeah. Calls themselves. How do logistics managers, if you were moving full truckload, kind of decide if you're going to use a single truck owner operator over like a fleet?
I don't care.
You don't care?
Easy.
So as long as they can get it moved, you don't care if they're 1 man or 50 men.
Do not care. Absolutely. Unless I tell, like, the only time when I would specify a driver would be if I want something to deliver on it with a team because there's a time associated with it. But like if I'm using a broker, I don't care. I trust you to do your job in the way that I want my boss to trust me to do my job. So
if you said, we're moving to asset-based fleets only, or an owner operators, how would you go about like maybe evaluating like an owner op? Would you just kind of look at just kind of based on a relationship still, or is it like if you were needing trucks, say spot market trucks? I know this is maybe just throwing darts at the wall, but if you were like needing spot market trucks or anything like that, how are you going and evaluating like an owner op or anything like that?
Again, it comes down to reliability. Whether or not if I'm going to use a broker, then I trust that broker has done their job,
done the homework,
vetted the carrier.
Yeah.
And the only time that I would necessarily tell a broker, hey, I do not want this, this carrier, is if, my people in the dock have had a bad experience with either they're late, they're rude, what have you. Like beyond that, like it's kind of a commodity. I don't really care.
Yeah, exactly.
That's like, I need the freight off of my dock. That's what I care about.
It's got to go. And as long as you can do it, you've got the freight.
Bingo.
Awesome. What is like any strategies that kind of you have used throughout your logistics career to help like keep logistics costs under control? Is there anything like specific, like one thing fits all? Or there are a lot of different strategies, obviously, that you've learned over the years?
Yeah. So the best answer is that like when you move more volume, whatever that is, it's generally cheaper than otherwise, right? So I'm always trying to move as much at the same time as possible, right? So when I'm moving out of China, right, I'm going to try and bulk up loads from parcel into freight, air freight, what have you.
Yeah. Same
thing applies, domestically.
Definitely.
That's sort of the easiest one. And then the other like really great strategy for me is like, I've done a lot of, innovative things, is like, I'm knowing I am not the smartest person in the world, nor am I the smartest person in logistics. And if I like have a thought about something that might be a better way of doing something, then someone else probably has already had that thought and they're already doing it. Right.
Yeah, for sure.
And so then it's just a question of like asking the people around me, is this right? Can you do this thing? Right. Like the world, like logistics is so nice of like, there's only 3 modes of transportation. You can go on the air, you can go on the sea, you can go on the road. That's it. And like, it kind of simplifies your options down. So I like to think like, I'm not the smartest in the room. Someone else has probably done this thing before.
No, that's awesome, man. I appreciate you coming on the show, Matthew. And we definitely got to have you come back on, because I think that 45 minutes probably wasn't enough. We probably need to have a couple of these, maybe once a quarter. Maybe we'll talk offline about this.
Yeah.
Maybe have you come on. But thank you so much. I really appreciate your time. Where can people find you online? Where's Low Budget Logistics, and where's Matthew Chapa? Where's he online at?
I am very on LinkedIn.
Awesome.
And then Low Budget Logistics is on YouTube under Low Budget Logistics. Got that handle. And then I'm also on Instagram as well under the same name, Low Budget Logistics.
Perfect. If you guys are looking for some really good quality content about logistics, definitely check out Matthew. All the links will be down in the comments or in the description if you're watching or if you're listening to the audio only podcast. And make sure you guys don't forget to check out our newsletters. Those drop every Monday and Wednesday at thinkfreight.io. And we'll catch you guys in the next episode. Matthew, thanks for coming on.
Thanks, Thomas. Appreciate it.